Hey, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the ReMinders podcast. So today I want to do something a little different. I've got my toes in so many different pools of the audio world, and I've been in a pretty constant state of trying to figure out how to put them all together. And I feel that this podcast can be one of the ways that I can sort of bring the many things that I do into one offering. On this channel, on my YouTube channel, there is a series that I started at some point in time. I'm not sure. I think it was last year at some point. And I haven't really kept up with it. It was the Mindful Reviews series, where I would basically be playing the role of like a, YouTube reaction channel. If you've ever come across those, where they're, listening to a song for the first time and giving their impressions. Well, this was a slight different take. I wasn't listening to songs I hadn't heard before necessarily. Mostly just songs that I know and love and wanted to take a meditative, critical listen of. And really with the intention of just inviting the listener to get into a mindful state, into a sort of meditative state, and going on a journey. For me, that's what music's all about, is to take us into the internal landscapes and have some fun there, or, make contact with emotions that we otherwise are not in touch with. That's what music is really about for me, and I think that's why they call it the universal language, because it doesn't really take necessarily the syntax, the verbal message, the explicit message really isn't the only resonating factor of music. Obviously, in the case of instrumental music, but even when it comes to music with lyrics, a lot of times I don't really necessarily tune into what the spoken message is of the actual language, if it's English. I really just let the music speak to me, and that's in some ways what I sort of intend my music to be. I've noticed that I really do kind of create music for an audience that's very similar to myself as a consumer and enjoyer of music. I enjoy long-form conceptual albums. Not necessarily concept albums in the sense of a rock opera where you're, telling a story throughout a whole album, but just in the sense that there's a continuity between the music, that there's a conceptual, thematic nature to the long form of an album or an EP. I've been working with EPs a lot the last couple years, really in an attempt to bridge the gap between recognizing that I am not, the average music listener, and I would like to have, an appeal to not just a very niche group of old school people like myself that enjoy, putting on headphones and kicking back to a classic album on vinyl or not, So the EP being like 4 songs or roughly between 20 and 30 minutes, a short album, that's been a little bit more of a middle ground between doing full-scale albums and doing singles. Anyway, so I thought that I could bring that into the podcast. So today I'm going to put on one of my recent releases. I'm going to share with you today the track Good Mourning / What's for Breakfast. Don't ask me why I decided to give it 2 names. It's kind of something I've done with a lot of different tracks for some reason. But this one, I guess I could explain a little bit. There's the obvious song that's like 4 minutes or so. And then there's like a 2 or minute and a half, something like that, sort of outro that feels very different. It feels almost like a little tag to the song rather than a part of the song itself. I mean, it's both. But anyway, so that second title is kind of the title of the little outro, second half of the song. So let me give a little bit of background of this track. So I just released this last month, and it is an updated version of the first single that I ever released 3 years ago, believe it or not. It was October 2019, and it was the EP version of Good Mourning. Why did I release two versions? Well, that first one was purely acoustic. This one includes drum set and bass guitar from my good friend Curtis, as well as some bowed bass from my friend June. Actually, my bandmate Ryan, I'm thinking about the most recent track that I released, Smiling Prayer, but this one had a little bit of a different arrangement. It had all of those people I mentioned, but also my bandmate Ryan, who I play on stage with. So again, kind of trying to release things in phases rather than waiting until the full magnum opus, is that the term for the, your grand offering here, which is, in this case, my first full-length album, Sola T. So I released that in two parts, the Sola EP in 2020 and the La T EP last year in 21. And each sort of represented a different side that the Sola T collection is offering, which is more extroverted acoustic guitar-based songs, and then more introverted, more meditative, primarily ukulele-based songs. And the concept of the Sola T album has always been, since the beginning of its inception, which goes back to like 2017, I believe, which, yes, is crazy to me that I've been taking so long to get this out. But, whatever, I'm not trying to rush art. So the concept behind the full album is basically for it to be a sunrise to sunset type of journey. So it's a very bright, sunny album, as you can see from the cover art. And so this is the first track of that album, of the album version. So like I said, it has extra instruments on it, extra mix and production elements. So let's dive into that and take a nice mindful listen to this tune. Got my singing bowl here. Just take a moment to come back to the breath. If you're not driving or not in the middle of doing something active, feel free to close your eyes. Even if you are doing something active, the difference, if there is any, between mindfulness and formal meditation. We can be aware of the awareness behind our identities, even while walking, doing something active, doing chores, driving, engaging in our favorite art play or work. We can retain that awareness of what's happening rather than being so fully identified with it as we usually are. And one of the easiest ways to do this is to simply become aware of the natural process of breathing in and out. Not to force any particular flow, simply to be aware, just to notice. And then to notice our thoughts. Again, not to control, not to stop them, simply to shine the light of awareness on what's happening in our mind and body and spirit. So with those thoughts in mind, so to speak, let's melt into the moment. Take a listen to this track.
Good morning.
Right, so that goes right into the next track on the album, which I also just released the updated version of, which is Smiling Prayer, Wherever You Be. And so the conceptual aspect of those two songs, like I said, this being like a sunrise to sunset sort of album, that would be good morning, right? The sun just did I say sun rose? Yes, sun just rose, and that's the wake up process. And so why did I call it good morning with a U, as in like grief, right? That is a little bit of a cheeky sort of thing that I did, kind of pointing towards the idea of letting go of yesterday. Whether good or bad, right? The past is past. So this idea of good morning, fresh start, positive morning, meaning positive letting go of what was to be fully available for what is. And so, the lyrics of this is really just kind of like an anti-anxiety sort of message. We don't have to worry anymore. We don't have to believe all the thoughts, that sort of thing. And the chorus and the bridge are a little bit more psychedelic. The first chorus being, here I am singing to the day, dancing among the dead, waiting to awaken from the days of life's illusions, something like that. That's a much more psychedelic, spiritual-ish message of the idea that all of life is sort of a dream that we are going to at some point awaken from, and sort of orienting myself into the very real reality that this body, this incarnation, is not forever. So sort of mourning my own death now so that I can be available for what is, and not clouding my experience by this unnamed or undigested dread of our inevitable fate of death. And that only feels morose to say in a culture that has a unhealthy relationship with death, which I would say American culture absolutely does. Probably many civilized cultures right now across the world, I think that there has been more healthy relating to what it means to be alive and what it means to die in more indigenous cultures. And of course, I can't speak to that in any real detail because I'm not a part of an indigenous culture. And maybe that's just intuition to say that. But from the few things that I've heard, I feel, in particular, that certain Native American tribes had more of a reverence for the dream of life and had more of a direct connection to spirit in that way, likely through their relationship with indigenous medicine, through what we call psychedelics, what they would call something else, probably something with a lot less cultural baggage and potentially negative connotation, depending on who hears that word and what context they grew up in relating to that word. To me, psychedelics is a very positive thing. It's not even just thinking of it in terms of medicine, but just in the terms of the word itself. To me, that is mind expanding, consciousness expanding. That's why I call my music psychedelic folk rock in some sense. I feel that it's mind expanding. I feel that it's not just booty boppers. Nothing wrong with booty boppers. I like bopping my booty every now and again. But that's not the music that I really make. I don't make dance music just as something to be entertaining. I use music as a platform for expressing and exploring my own psyche and emotions and all the other unnamed flows that exist within the human existence, right? That's some background around that song and why it's named that way. I'm gonna show you a few different elements to this song that I think are kind of unique and could be fun for you to take a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. Let's take a look first at near the beginning. So you hear my buddy Ryan, my bandmate, on the auxiliary percussion. So if you haven't seen us on stage, Ryan is a drummer who plays the legendary hand drums that he has customized and built himself. He's building up this company called Legendary Hand Drums, and his hi-hat apparatus is completely his own design. The snare sounds that he has are little, basically miniature cajones without the bass part, so it's a little snare box, and he has 2 of those hanging on either side of his djembe, and then he's got classic bongos and stuff. Obviously, he didn't make the bongos, but he's got a bunch of bells and whistles and chimes. So there's this spot in the beginning where the chimes come in. I want to show you that real quick. Let's take a listen again. Okay, so as you could hear there, the last few sounds we heard from the percussion, those are, I can't even remember what they're called, castanets? Little wooden sticks that make cool sounds. But what I wanted to show you was that chime sound, and then I reversed it, and I think it has a really cool, mystical, sort of crystalline feel to it. So I thought that was a cool element that I threw in there, reversing Ryan's wind chimes. And then in the chorus, if you listen really closely in the background, you'll hear this sort of higher register vocal. What that is my lead vocal pitched up a whole octave, maybe 2, I can't remember, and just drowning in reverb and really tucked in the back. There might be some other effects on it too. But this was an idea that I got from someone. And yeah, I mean, let me know what you think. I feel like it gives it a sort of airy something. I don't know. Let's take a listen again.
I am here, singing to the day. I am here, dancing among the dead, waiting waking from the
I have to say, after just explaining that to you, I didn't hear it clearly as well. But I heard it in that initial listen through. Yeah, it's just I mean, you really probably would need to listen to it through a stereo situation, whether that be headphones, AirPods, whatever you got, or an actual stereo speaker set. But yeah, it's just this really high part that's happening really far back, and just gives it some extra depth and some extra psychedelic element to it, which I just love. I love there being this little ear candy in these mixes where you don't really necessarily know where that's coming from, but you might not even notice it. I mean, that's why they call it, no, that's not why they call it ear candy. They call it ear candy because it's sweet to the ears. But that is what ear candy is, just little tiny elements that you probably won't notice for the first couple times listening through something, unless you're really intently, very critically listening, again, through headphones or in an environment that is really a high fidelity environment. There's one other spot I want to show you near the end where it turns into the What's for Breakfast outro. So that first, I guess it's about 5 minutes, is the actual Good Morning song. Like I said, that's just sort of the sunrise energy, letting go of yesterday. And then the What's for Breakfast, coda, if you will, for the musician nerds out there, is the concept behind that is what I was imagining when I was producing this, was for that section to be, okay, so you got out of bed and you're making breakfast. So if you hear, it's not too buried in the mix, but there is a sample of a audio sample of someone making breakfast. There's sizzling, I don't know, bacon and eggs or something, and you'll even hear the spatula go. That didn't sound too loud, did it? Little ka ka ka. which the drums echo right after that happens. But the thing that I wanted to show you is those weird sounds that happen you may or may not have noticed. I put that in there as the idea that this part of the song and the rest of the album, really, I kind of am conceptualizing it being you're making breakfast and you just turned on the radio. I know, kind of archaic technology, right? But so that radio dial is happening, and it finally dials in, and that's where it breaks into the vocal, and the drums and bass come back in. And you may have noticed the drums and bass, they could have sounded really nice and clean and forefront like they did in the chorus when they came in, but they don't. The drums sound really kind of glitched out, and the bass is pretty small feeling. And they also, if you're listening in a stereo environment, they're panning from left and right, sort of circling around, almost as if, you're making breakfast in the kitchen and you're walking around, whatever. The radio's staying there. So the drums and bass in particular are sort of representing this like radio vibe, that there's something on the radio and you're cooking breakfast and you're whatever the lyrics are about. I can't even remember at this point. But let's take a listen to that real quick. Cool. And there was that little ka-ka-ka with the snare echoes after the spatula. Anyway, those are just a few little spots that I thought you might find interesting. Little Easter eggs. But yeah, so the next episode, I actually already recorded this a couple days ago. I'm going to have my friend Andrew on, who just put out a new album, and we're doing a similar thing. We're going to listen to one of his tracks, and I give my impressions afterwards. And I'm going to share the second track of this album, which the two of the songs are now available on all the streaming platforms as a little tiny EP with the two tracks called Mourning Mantra, Solati singles. So yeah, that's pretty much what I want to share as far as that song goes. I must admit I felt a little disappointed in myself for not getting this full album ready and released this summer, because it's very much a summer and spring, high vibin', high bright, sunny album. So I don't really want to release it in the dead of winter or anything like that. But I figured I would at least release these two singles and start to share the story of the album now. And even as the weather may be getting colder and stuff like that, I feel like having a little sonic sunshine in our morning playlist is never a bad thing. So those two songs are out there now if you want to check them out. But with that said, I am working on what I consider to be my next fall release. I don't know that I'm going to complete it by the end of this fall. Last year I did release the Fate Weaving EP, which is very much an autumn sort of vibe. So if you're like me and enjoy listening to seasonal sounds, then the Fate Weaving EP is the Chantieris release that you want to check out if you're looking for a fall vibe. But yeah, I'm really excited about the new songs that I'm cooking up for this next one. I think I'm going to call it, what was I thinking? Calm Arise EP, or maybe Arise EP. And it is actually two of the tracks from Fate Weaving, recycled for this release, but then it's an intro called Palm, which we started a bunch of our sets the last couple years, actually, the last couple summers. Palm, it's kind of an improv sort of deal. So we have Palm, the Palm Song, and the Palm Psalm. Yeah, I'm super annoying, and that's just what I do. They're vaguely connected. They're kind of brother-sister songs, and yeah, I won't verbalize too much, but I'm very excited about them. It's gonna be some next level production for me. So I'm stoked. Anyway, yeah, thank you for tuning in, and let me know what you think about this style of an episode. If you're into the music episodes, maybe a little bit of a deeper dive into my mixes, and otherwise, I'm probably going to stray away from covering any super commercial music on the podcast itself, because eventually I do want to put the podcast on Spotify and all that good stuff. And I'd run into copyright claims at that point. But if you're a musician and you want to do one of these episodes with your music, I'm absolutely open to that. But yeah, and I think in the future I might mix this sort of idea with guests as well. Maybe not doing a full dive of, giving my, peek behind the curtain of the mixes and stuff like that, not getting too deep into that. But just to take a break, or to open an episode with a full song and actually listening to it and getting into the mindful state before having a conversation and kind of having that be the kickoff point, I think could be pretty cool. So let me know what you think about that. If you enjoy this episode and this podcast, please give a like. I hate to ask, but it really does help the algorithm and gets the word out to more people, more visibility. So got to play the game of the internet stuff. So. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and if you've made it this far, we're probably really good friends, so love you, homie. Peace out.